Hello everyone, my name is Galeano and welcome to Film Bros Perspective, the series where I, a film graduate, combine my love for film and video games to analyze their common ground. This specific video is a special one because it's about a game that a lot of my close friends know that I love, that being Silent Hill 2 Remake. I played this game as a Christmas gift back in 2024, so I came a little late to the party. However, I did play the original Silent Hill 2 as part of the HD collection all the way back when it was in PS Now, back when that used to exist. Meaning I have been interested in the series for much longer than before I played the remake. I never got to finish the original, so it was still a new experience playing the remake itself regardless. When I first booted up that game, I was immediately blown away by the quality of the cutscenes. I knew I was going into a masterpiece of a game. I'm not saying that the original did not have its appeal, it did, but it shows that these developers understood what made the original so appealing. Although what I just said is actually a hot take among certain circles, and even if I can understand some of the objections that are made, it still doesn't change the fact that it has been faithfully preserved in its modernization. Cinema-like quality is very much the goal with this game, and one can very easily tell the care and attention that was put into these key aspects of the visuals overall. As someone who has a film degree, I notice all these things. They are not minor implementations or cool features. These make the game for what it is. Even if you are not a gamer, I highly recommend experiencing this story either through a walkthrough or just pick it up yourself if you are one. This is not a game worth missing out on, and it is alone a reason to get into the gaming space.
We spent the whole day there. Just the two of us staring at the water.
The original Silent Hill 2 game was developed by Team Ninja and published by Konami in 2001. However, the remake was picked up by Bloober Team and published also by Konami in 2024. To oversimplify the story, since I am going to elaborate on most of these points later in the video, the story revolves around a man named James Sunderland. He received a letter from his wife, Mary, who had called him to the town Silent Hill, a location that she quotes to be their special place. I should also clarify that Mary has been dead by 3 years at this point in the game, meaning that James's goal is to find Mary somehow alive in this town. But he very quickly finds out this journey is not shaping into what somebody would normally expect. Throughout the journey, he goes through different monsters, witnesses tragic character arcs, and an increasing hauntedness of Silent Hill. All of these are representative of his own inner turmoil that unfolds the more he journeys on. That is until we witness the revelation that James did in fact kill his own wife, and this has been a walk of confronting the consequences of it this entire time. Eventually, he fights a monstrous version of his own wife, who depending on player choices throughout the game, is either a bitter manifestation of her, or a transformed version from an imposter of his own creation. The impact this had on the genre was significant, as it was a departure from traditional horror storytelling, where there are clear protagonists and antagonists with clear motivations and clear obstacles. It introduced a deeper level of story, utilizing very human elements like psychology and an unforgiving world that does not seek to accommodate the protagonist. Gone are the cheap scares from very obvious threats, when self-reflection and the realities of human nature can become a far more powerful force to reckon with. Some general story themes the game touches on are guilt, grief, repressed traumas, sexual frustration, and even self-condemnation. And that is for James alone. A lot of other themes for different characters include enablers, insecurities, persecution complex, and ignorant innocence. What makes this game unique in its own genre is that all of these have physical representations of each theme. Yet these representations do not tell you who they are, it is mostly on the player to figure these things out. Unfortunately, this has led to a lot of misinterpretations and different conclusions on what these representations could really mean. Mainly, it is the recent film adaptations of the game, Return to Silent Hill, that is guilty of these. However, this will be talked about more during the end of the video, so stay tuned for my thoughts on that film.
Hey! Wait! Damn it.
Silent Hill 2 is hands down the king of subtlety. It absolutely refuses to explain the deeper characteristics off the bat. Based on dialogue and character interactions, the game expects you to already know these characters, even if they are meeting each other for the first time. There are rarely moments where exposition is given in a traditional context The typical, my name is this, I am from here, I am looking for this, and this is what I'm feeling. Oftentimes, some interactions leave you more confused than having gained more knowledge to progress the story forward. It's what we would call breadcrumbing in screenwriting, where little pieces of information are spread throughout until you have collected every crumb to form a full loaf. However, even the story takes into account how the crumbs are spread, because they are not always found within the immediate visible plot. This approach to subtlety is what makes the story attractive in the first place. It rewards critical thinking and going beyond the superficial to find out what is truly happening. A lot of elements are there to tell a story of their own and build the rich world of the haunted town, in contrast to how cinematography, for example, is used to support the mood of a story. One almost ends up creating their own sub-narratives to understand the context in an individual way. Every medium that exists and will exist always has their own approaches to storytelling that people always find a new comfort in. However, this approach also causes for risk of confusion and therefore people checking out of the story. Not only that, but also divisions to how these narrative elements actually work, which can create even more confusion since it might become a moment of doubt across players who have come to different conclusions. The game uses this as leverage to find its own niche audience. Not every story needs to be straightforward, and people often want to experience a narrative that forces their minds to work. Even the storytellers do not give clear answers to their audience, allowing their people to debate among one another how things could truly be interpreted. The most major example is which specific ending is canon in the game. Although there have been hints at an answer, every path is valid, and each player is entitled to their own opinion.
Oh, you mean the man back there? In the kitchen?
I didn't do it. I swear I didn't kill him.
Yeah, it's alright. I'm not saying that you did.
The game's approach to side characters is unique, because they are not people who support James's journey and help him accomplish his goals. All of them have their own issues, and actually some become obstacles for James throughout his personal development. One could argue that this is reminiscent of a TV story structure with B plots and C plots. However, even with individual character stories, they are still working to make the protagonist's life harder or easier. In Silent Hill 2, these characters behave more like side protagonists who you do not play as, and actually have their own perceptions of how Silent Hill functions around them. Starting with James, his misery is the reason why the town looks foggy and why monsters look the way they do. I would describe him as a gift from a family member, where you have to go through all the wrapping and papers before getting to the real thing, except James is like the box in this analogy. Every waking moment in his life is meant to unravel his mental state even more until the legendary climax of the game, which serves to recontextualize the entire narrative. At first, one would normally sympathize with the solemn and reserved man. He seems to be getting by and not questioning much around him. Even characters often accuse him of believing things that outwardly he professes against, but then you realize that all of these accusations are true. The game the entire time has put the truth in your face. It was through your own benefit of the doubt that you refused to see it. Angela Orozco is a similarly compelling example, who is comparable to James's character, except she is a victim of her circumstances who snapped when she finally had the opportunity to take action against it. She comes to Silent Hill in search of her mother, who she sees as a source of comfort and protection in her life. Yet, in reality, it is the exact opposite. Angela has been a victim of the worst kinds of abuse from the hands of her father and brother, and her mother was the person who enabled the abuse and convinced Angela that it was all her fault. We find out that she had actually stabbed her father and brother in retaliation, and sometime after ended up in Silent Hill. By the end of her character arc, she fully comes to terms with the fact that her mother is not the person she made a false image of, but also declares that she is unlovable and undeserving of anything good. Her perception of Silent Hill is different from James in that it looks like a constant realm of hellfire for her, a fire she ends up walking into and presumably succumbing to it by the end. Eddie Dombrowski is a much different story, and when you initially meet him, he is throwing up his guts in a dirty bathroom due to seeing a dead body in a fridge nearby. He initially comes across as a scared and insecure man who's looking for a sense of allegiance in James. From the first encounter, we can see that James's rejection of going with him is personal. Eddie takes it as an attack to his character. Throughout the game, we see this characteristic of his begin to develop in an increasingly toxic manner. James's well-intentioned comments are never taken as what the intention really is. By the end of his story, Eddie has fully succumbed to his anger and convinced himself that James was making fun of him and had evil intentions against him the whole time. This culminates in a fight to the death between them, in which he reveals how a deep insecurity about his weight was caused by consistent bullying from his peers. He snapped and in his rage, killed the dog and shot a man in the leg, causing him to flee from the police and end up in Silent Hill as a result. His perception of Silent Hill is the opposite of Angela's. It is a cold, gloomy environment for him, which is why the fight takes place in an industrial meat freezer. James is unfortunately forced to kill Eddie and simply move on with his life. One final character I want to bring up is directly connected to James's wife, Mary, and it is the only child we see in the entire world, Laura. When we first meet her, we know off the bat that she is actually Mary's close friend, who is with her in the hospital while she was dying. Interestingly though, Laura does not see any of the monsters or hauntedness of the town in the same way that the other characters do, which is why she is very playful and unafraid. Of course, any regular adult will be concerned for her, as James is for her safety. But one could argue he cares because of her connection to Mary and not from his own will. Laura treats James very badly, even by child standards. In fact, she is the primary character who accuses James of not loving Mary. She is also present when James plays the tape of him killing his wife, representing the fact that she was correct about everything she said prior.
Look, I'm not sure what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Really?
I briefly spoke about how Silent Hill itself is a metaphor for each character. To be more specific, each element gives insight into how the characters think and their personal experiences. The fog alone is a repression of James's memories, since you can't really see far ahead and makes you visually impaired. Each enemy is an overall manifestation of James's resulting traumas and failed relationship with his wife, made clear by some of the provocative designs of certain enemies. The bubblehead nurses are a metaphor for James's conflicting sexuality due to his only connection being one of a caretaker and not a lover. There are moments in the game where James travels to an alternative version of the same world, coined the other world. There are the moments where the agony he suffers under is at full display. All the worst things are in effect within this realm, which is where we see the legendary Pyramid Head come into play. He is the figure who encapsulates everything about James, mainly his need for punishment for his crime. He didn't need to say anything about himself. Pyramid Head says it for him with his presence alone. The shot design of the game also explains a lot about the world. Although it's clear that there is in-game artificial lighting to make everything visually pleasing, the stars are the little practical lights scattered throughout the world, contributing to the dark overall feel of the game. Exteriors are lit just enough to see everything, but filtered by the fog to the point where it makes everything feel equal, which makes it all the more terrifying when you see the enemies pop out of nowhere and especially moving quickly through the desaturated environment.
Hey, you think I'd look good in this one?
Sure.
To clarify the title of this section, I mean to say that the character is directly related to how the gameplay works, which might sound like an obvious conclusion, but what I mean is that in this case, it makes complete sense with how he operates. The game does not attempt to make you believe that he is an expert in fighting, and instead embraces that he is just a regular human as portrayed accordingly. Usually games portray character progression as suddenly learning how to handle weapons and over time, receiving different grades of weaponry, which realistically are hard to handle and require certain strengths to master. Granted, there are usually skill trees and upgrades to answer that, but Silent Hill 2 does not provide any sort of upgrade systems anywhere. You make do with what you find. Progressing through these different items is directly tied to what we see about him. One thing I did not reveal is that James had choked Mary to death. It is not a coincidence that the most prominent weapons in the game are related to his arm strength, such as the wooden plank, the pipe, and the chainsaw. Of course, James does receive certain firearms, but the way he handles them is not like the military-trained protagonist of your average shooter game. The recoil kicks back a lot, reload times are of average speed, and finding ammo is scarce enough to the point where you have to resort to the melee weapons anyway. The sound design for them seems to imply that they are meant to be relied on, as I personally have never had a satisfying gun kill, but the melee kills are always worthy of memorizing. I have seen complaints about the combat feeling clunky, and while I do agree that some of the mechanics can come across a little difficult to get used to, they still make sense with the character of James. I find myself thinking that he moves exactly how I would move if I were in his situation.
Laura! Wait!
The individual performances for each actor, compared to the original, are very brilliant. Each of them have their way of adding to the characters that simply make you feel like it is actually them. Again, this sounds obvious as that is the standard that the casting process for any movie or show holds to, but it disproves a certain notion that those standards cannot be accomplished in the same way. James is played by the great English actor Luke Roberts, who actually had received nominations for his performance at the Game Awards, and if you have a working pair of eyes, you can see that James is modeled after his likeness. This of course is a common trend in modern gaming to attach star power to a work, a practice that has existed since the beginning of film. However, the one thing that stands out in their performances is that they are all very uncanny sounding, as if they were all speaking like they belonged in a dream. However, this does work in the game's favor, because it demands that none of it sounds natural and keeps you guessing on how these characters truly operate day to day. It is easy for actors to know that they must sound natural even if they receive unnatural lines. But how about when they are supposed to sound unnatural with natural lines? Having to select people who are able to execute that while keeping a straight face must not have been an easy find, and even people can sound unnatural at being unnatural, which in turn can subject them to feel greatly humiliated. Try talking like they talk in Silent Hill in the real world, and see how far you can get. Let's see how many grown men get disowned by their parents or exiled from their countries for adopting extremely freaky ways of talking. But I personally enjoy it all the way.
So he attacked you, and you shot him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. He made me do it.
Calm down, hey.
Silent Hill 2 does have a general reputation as being an unclear and confusing story within certain circles, and that can cause certain creatives to feel the need to have to explain it away in their own terms. I want to be clear, misinterpretation is mainly an audience issue, not a creative issue. Do not hear what I am not saying. I am differing misinterpretation with differing interpretations. The creatives behind the game do welcome creating your own narratives behind what they present to you, and multiple conclusions are a way to honor the vision of those creatives. I will admit that even my own conclusions about this game are highly subjective, and I am combining my own experiences with general interpretations of the people before me who have covered my blind spots. The issue mainly is when people remove the vision from the work and insist that their view is the only correct view. Different interpretations do not necessarily mean that you are misunderstanding the work itself. If anything, it proves that you care so much about the work that you want to make sure you are understanding it accurately. Uncariness is proven in exclusivism and not being charitable in these conclusions. I should reiterate again that these are mostly theories based on existing fan spaces and not about the work itself. Regarding how one even feels about the game as well, this story was not made for the empathetic person. The game does not pull any punches on making you consider the question of whether or not someone deserves to be treated the same once you find out their deepest, darkest secret. It challenges you as a person, and therefore makes you choose whether to keep supporting these characters or not. So, if you do ever experience this game, I would like to know how these characters made you feel, and what changed once you came to a complete understanding of who they really are.
I am so sorry, Maria. I really am. But this has to stop.
Analyzing this game has been nothing but a really fun experience, as even though there is so much more that I could say about it, it made me reconsider my approach on how to go beyond the superficial. Film does demand that you look at everything in order to support the story you're trying to tell. However, this is not saying that people outside of it are incapable of analyzing it on their own. I am only here to encourage more people to do so within their own respective professions. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of this video, and hopefully you have been enlightened in some way. God bless.